And as anybody that watches the channel knows, that is a declaration of war. This means war. Yeah. Or you just want to shake my hand? Oh, he wants to grab the camera. He's already a budding YouTube personality.
I thought I heard myself mispronounce something. Anyway, mom brain is very serious.
Hi there, folks. I'm Sean the Modern Yeoman, and it's time to do a quick little project with our compost situation. As many of you know, we set up this compost bin here probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, and we've been using it ever since to great effect. We essentially just take our kitchen scraps, pile them in here. We take leaves and other random lawn care detritus and we pile it in here. And we've actually turned out some really good compost. If you can dig in here a little bit, you can see just under the surface of all this kitchen detritus, you find some really rich, beautiful, dark compost. This stuff is great, and we'll actually use it in the garden. But the problem is, right now it's just one pile, and it's always active. Wherever there's kitchen scraps, wherever there's leaves that aren't broken down, it's an active compost pile, and it's not very easy to get the usable stuff extracted from the compost and into the garden. So I don't know why I haven't done this before, but I'd like to set up another compost pile, another compost bin next to this where we can start putting active compost that we can actually use in the garden. And the process of moving it over won't be that hard. I've got like a little soil filter thing that I built. And so what I can essentially do is just set that soil filter up over the active compost pile, take a shovel and pour on the active compost. I'm messing it up. I'm saying it wrong. What I can do is take a shovel from the active compost pile, shovel it over the finished compost, and have it filter through with my little soil filter. Everything that doesn't get filtered through, I put right back into the active compost pile. And so we'll have two piles going at any one particular time, a pile for an active compost, and then a pile for finished compost ready to use in the garden. So that's what I'm going to do today. Is I'm actually going to take some of these panels. Hopefully I should only need two, because what I'm thinking I'm going to do is set up another panel right here next to this one, and set up another panel right here. So we'll have two compartments for our compost. It shouldn't be a terribly complicated job. I'll show you what I'm doing. Essentially what I'm going to do is take some long rebar posts like this, connect them to the actual panels with these pipe straps right here, and just use the pipe strap rebar combination to hold the panel up. These particular compost panels have been holding up very well for 2 years now, and so we're just going to make the extension with the same system that we have for them. It shouldn't be a tough project. It should be fairly easy and straightforward, so let's get to it. Now the first thing I'm going to want to do is just kind of get my positioning sorted out. Just make sure I have a good spot where I can hammer down some rebar posts without running into roots or rock under the surface. Just a good spot to lay those rebar posts, as well as the panel itself. And just make sure that I have a good spot laid out before I actually do that kind of final move of putting those rebar posts in the ground. They're easy to get into the ground, provided you don't have rock or roots that you're running into, but they're not easy to get out of the ground. So I want to make sure I have a very good spot for them. You'll also note that I'm using this salvaged door that I found in the barn. It wasn't being used for anything else. It's certainly not being used as an actual door. So it serves my purpose as being a great compost bin panel, a side panel. So I'm gonna actually just put this thing to work, and it's perfect height. It's the perfect length. I think it'll be great for what I need in terms of this compost bin. Now it's time to put the metal straps on. You'll note that these are 1/2-inch straps, which quite a bit bigger than the rebar I'm working with here. But that's all I could find at the store. That's all they had. That's the smallest straps that they had. And it will do what I need it to do, which is just hold the rebar in place. That's it. I mean, if there's a little wiggle room, which there will be, that's okay. I'm not too concerned about that. As long as the rebars are holding the panels in place, that's all I care about. Okay, so the structure is up. It's solid enough. There's a little bit of wiggle, but I don't care. It does what it needs to do, or it will do what it will need to do. And that's just serve as a place to compartmentalize my finished compost. That's it. That's all I need it to do. Let me give you a quick demonstration of what the sifting process will look like. I'm not going to subject you to the entire shoveling process, but let me show you how this little filter will work for me when I'm moving over finished compost. And I can keep the stuff that's still active, the big chunks, and move them back over to the working compost. So there you go. There's a quote-unquote finished compost pile, and I'm disclaiming that with finger quotes because you'll still see little eggshells and stuff in here, a little piece of lemon that made it through my filter, but that stuff's small enough to where it's not going to pose any sort of major issue in my garden. In fact, it'll probably help it. I just don't want the big chunks, the apple cores, the huge eggshells, the avocado peels, stuff like that. I want to break down to where it's smaller. And here we go. Look at this. It's beautiful, rich compost, and it's going to serve my garden very well. Now, I've got a lot to do. And like I said, I'm not going to subject you to it, but we're off to a really good start. This will be the finished compost. Over here will be the working compost. And I think I've got a pretty cool system. In other news, the squash bugs have started laying eggs in earnest. And as anybody that watches the channel knows, that is a declaration of war. This means war. So I'm going through as much as I can and trying to clear these squash bug eggs out as much as I can, as well as the actual squash bugs. If I see a squash bug, I'll squish it. And just cutting, like I showed you guys last week, just cutting the egg patches out and trying to find as many as I can to limit the population explosion of squash bugs that typically happens this time of year. I want to stop as many squash bugs from hatching as possible. There's different ways to do that. People talk about neem oil. One thing I'm probably going to try, a viewer left a comment that I think is good. It's called BT. I forget the actual Latin name, but it's some sort of bacteria that supposedly kills squash bugs. I would like to look for some of that this weekend and try it on. But until then, the best method I've found for getting rid of squash bugs is just manually going in, peeking under the leaves, and cutting out the squash bug eggs as much as I can. One little garden experiment that's gone very well is use of comfrey leaves, which have all disintegrated and rotted away below the tomato plants. Now, some of these tomato plants were in really rough shape when I laid those comfrey leavings behind. As you can see, here's a little piece of comfrey that's kind of rotted away. All of the tomatoes are just looking quite well right now. They've really gotten very healthy. In fact, I think we're starting to get some sun golds. This one isn't quite ready, but it's getting there. So in the spirit of comfrey experimentation, Holly's been doing some research on comfrey tea, and she instructed me to fill a bucket with three quarters of the way full with comfrey leaves. I filled up 2 buckets. What do we have here? Yeah. Yes. Oh, really? What's this stick here? Gonna give it to me? Or you just want to shake my hand? Oh, he wants to grab the camera. He's already a budding YouTube personality. What do we have in here?
I just went through and picked the cucumbers, the zucchini, and the yellow squash. We've got 10 cucumbers. I don't know how many squash, but we've got a lot of squash.
Oh, it's looking
And a lot of
good.
zucchini.
That's a lot of raspberries.
Black raspberries.
Black raspberries.
These are wild black raspberries that we propagated.
So what's the deal with comfrey tea?
So comfrey tea, you essentially cut a bunch of comfrey leaves, fill a bucket, fill it with water, put a lid on it. Wait, I have terrible mom brain.
That's exactly what I
Okay,
just
I
did.
thought I heard myself mispronounce something. Anyway, mom brain is very serious. You fill a bucket with comfrey, you put water over it, you put a lid on the bucket, you let it sit out in the hot sun for a couple weeks till it gets really stinky and mushy, and then that makes a wonderful fertilizer for your garden. Comfrey is insanely mineral rich. It has these really, really long roots that reach down and deep in the ground. Some people say up to 20 feet. And so it pulls minerals up from the soil, right, Henry? And when you make a tea out of the leaves or put the leaves in your compost,
He's eating something.
those minerals, replenishing his microbiome, those minerals get distributed to your plants. So we're gonna let the comfrey tea ferment, and then you dilute it. Once you have a batch made, you dilute it with water, and then you put it on your plants.
Well, we'll revisit our comfrey tea in a few weeks, see how it does.
We will.
Well, thanks for hanging out with us today, everyone. It's good to get some projects done, some projects that, frankly, we've needed to get done for a long time. Until we see you again next time, remember, as always, slowly, slowly.